Welcome to IDG Chit Chat Live for the week of May 1st, 2016. Today we'll be talking about the season finale of Who Do You Think You Are? And in this season finale, we actually have two wonderful stories to talk about, so I hope you're ready. If you haven't watched it yet, spoiler alert. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I am Jennifer Alford, publisher for the In-Depth Genealogist. Joining me today are Terry O'Connell, Executive Director of the In-Depth Genealogist, Sherry Hudson-Passy of Carolina Girl Blog, we have Valerie Lair, and Christine Woodcock of Genealogy Tours of Scotland. Welcome everyone.
Hey.
Hi. So how are you guys doing? Did you enjoy these episodes?
They were great.
Mm-hmm. Very much so, and we're going through a depression now because that was the season finale.
I know.
I know. I really want to know why they had to cram them both into one night.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, spread it out even one more week.
I know, right?
That would have been nice.
It was a great way to do it, though, because they were both excellent shows.
They were.
Yeah, they were both very good. They definitely made up for last week.
Ooh.
Yeah, let me tell you how I really feel. So the two celebrities that were covered in these two episodes were Chris Noth and Michele. And so let's start off with Chris. And anyone want to kick things off with their thoughts? Anyone? Miss Valerie?
Oh.
Yes, I do. Notes. I know you have notes.
Yep, I got the typical notes. Having that double season finale, my hand is so sore still taking notes. The biggest, of course, I loved this episode because of Chicago, and you know, from my great-grandparents on both sides, they were there. And then, of course, the Ireland part, and seeing the last name of McGuire, because that's on my husband's side, so I can't wait to go down that rabbit hole. But the biggest thing, the biggest glaring thing to point out was on his dad's birth certificate from 1922, it is very clearly seen for his dad's last name and his father and mother is Moth, M-O-T-H, instead of N-O-T-H. And I'm thinking, ooh, I wonder if they ended up getting the right one, but obviously they did. but yeah,
it just shows how changes happen over time, right?
Oh yeah, well yeah, and then of course with the Great Chicago Fire, and my great grandparents and his siblings, that just hit really close to home because yet again so many other more additional reasons for me to go there.
Come and visit, Val.
I got to. I am. I don't need a spare bedroom. Just give me a piece of carpet on the floor.
I don't know if my dog would like that, but okay.
But yeah, great content from the Chicago part of it.
You know what I love that they showed a different repository. They didn't do the Daily Center, which is the norm every time Who Do You Think You Are has been here. They've always gone down to the Daily Center. So they showed IRAD, which is in Northeastern Illinois University, and what were the other ones that they showed? The Chicago Historical...
The History Museum?
Yeah, the History Museum. And then there was
that was my favorite part when he was showing that book with the illustrations of the Great Chicago Fire. I was just blown away.
Amazing.
I had never seen those.
I have not either, so that was pretty amazing.
That was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the pictures that were on the internet, were circling the internet after the tsunami hit. And you would see pictures of what the area was like before the tsunami and then what it was like after the tsunami, and it was completely wiped out. And that's what it reminded me of when we were looking at those pictures of the Great Chicago Fire. You know, it was a thriving city, and then suddenly it was just decimated.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote down the page numbers.
Show him. Yeah, they could show him, this is about where they lived, and then to show that's what had been destroyed. It's better than just saying, oh, well, they died in the Chicago fire. It's so visual.
Absolutely.
So much more of an impact to be able to see that.
Yeah.
Well, it was something that even confirmed that the deaths were there. They found the obituary for the grandmother some 9 years later, 8 years later, but the grandfather they found nothing else on, so they could only guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what really gave me goosebumps is the two street names that they mentioned. LaSalle, which is the name of the street where the church was at for my great-grandparents and all of their families, and where he was married and his brother. And then, if that wasn't enough, when they showed the Ann McGuire's funeral notice, it had Madison Street, and of course they lived on, my great-grandparents lived on Madison Street, and it's like,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see why you would be quite attracted to this episode.
I want to buy the episode. I always have.
Yeah.
It definitely was a good one, especially with the information given on the Chicago fire. I will tell you that the Chicago Genealogical Society, every year they do a historical tour of Chicago. And one that they've done a few times was on the Chicago fire. And they take you, to where it started, which is now the Chicago Fire Museum. And that used to be O'Leary's farm. And Val, I know when we talked earlier, we talked about the cow briefly. Yeah. I just want you to know that that cow was acquitted. It was not the cow's fault.
Oh,
They all had a trial a few years back, and they acquitted the cow.
Well, in a written oral interview, I've got two from two different relatives, and one of them, she specifically mentions the name and the cow.
That's sad. The O'Learys are buried in, I want to say they're buried in Resurrection Cemetery, but don't quote me on it. And they're not allowed to tell anybody where they are.
Aww.
Because they don't. The family didn't want people to know. They didn't want them coming and, desecrating their graves.
Yeah, right.
Aww.
That's a shame.
But anyhow, back to this tour. It's very interesting. They take you along basically the route, and some of the things that we stopped and saw were old alleyways where the alley was still wood bricks.
No way.
Very cool. We saw a house. It was like the only house on the block that survived the fire.
Isn't that amazing?
It is astounding tour to go on. And the house that survived the fire, recently there was an article. It's this little itty bitty rinky dinky house. And I'm thinking here. Okay, this one didn't survive the fire. It was one of the quick built up clapboards afterwards for the families that huddled into them to live. And it's almost like the size of a garage. And these two guys own it now, and they sit out front, and all these people go by. Well, they were selling it, I think, last year maybe for some astronomical price because of the history that is attached to it. But also, for those of you who've been to the Newberry, so Newberry was in the path of the fire.
Oh, was it?
They saved it because from what I heard, whoever owned it was up top, dumping buckets.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
It's safe.
That's amazing.
It's crazy how far this fire went. It also went through Lincoln Park Zoo, which was originally City Cemetery. So at this point in time, it was still City Cemetery. There were still headstones. They had already begun moving the bodies and relocating them because of the proximity to the water. They were afraid of contamination.
Oh, I've never heard that.
But when they came through, people, the masses are running through City Cemetery. They were knocking over headstones because it was just imagine the running of the bulls, basically,
Sure.
So they didn't know where to put these headstones. So there are still bodies that are buried underneath Lincoln Park.
Oh,
And
wow.
every time they go to build something, they always find more bodies.
Oh dear.
But a great thing, and I looked this up earlier, for
Wow.
people who are interested in this kind of period of history in Chicago, hiddentruths.northwestern.edu has a whole thing on the fire in the cemetery and all of that.
Oh, wow.
A lot of great information there. I took a tour, actually. It was a Halloween tour that started at the Chicago History Museum and ended going through what was the city cemetery. So Lincoln Park. And it was probably the coolest thing I've ever done in Chicago at Halloween time.
That
Can you
does
give
sound
that
cool.
website again slowly so our listeners can?
It was Hidden Truths, so HIDDENTruths.northwestern.edu.
Great, thank you. Not only for our listeners, but for me.
And if you just did a Google search like Hidden Truths Chicago, or even just Chicago City Cemetery, it will pop up.
Yeah, these two first-hand accounts I want to submit to the Chicago Genealogical Society for either their newsletter or quarterly.
Absolutely, you should.
You get goosebumps and chills, and when she's talking, you know, how she was little, and you know, people running by, you know, and her dad, you know, went to go and help, and so then the mom and her and the other kids had to, you know, fend for themselves and where they went and what they took with them, and to you know, save, and that it just, I mean, I was crying as I was transcribing it. Yeah, yeah.
Can
So
you turn it into story format? Because you know they have a writing contest going on right now.
Oh.
ooh, you know me in writing,
Oh
but
yeah.
sure. Well, actually, I would just
put it out there.
I would just put it there in her own words, you know.
Yeah.
So, and then put my name on it, and then say when I was there.
Right. Too fun.
Yes.
That was I have to say, it was a very great part of Chicago, and I just thoroughly enjoyed that they showed another side to the research here.
Yeah. I'm glad that they showed the Cook County website with the birth certificates, because I've used that myself. I have a number of my relatives who are born in Cook County, and it helped confirm some of the information I'd found elsewhere.
Well,
and it's awesome.
I will tell you this. They are expensive. I want to say it's like $17 and then a processing fee, and then you can download it right away. The Wilmette Family History Center, and I know, Jen, like you're out of state, but you know, let me know ahead of time and I can go and grab them. They have all of them microfilmed, so everything that was on Family Search at one point is at the Wilmette Family History Center.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so they're still out there for free.
Yeah.
You know, it's just getting out there to get them, and they do have great hours. I mean, they're open 2 days a week till 9 p.m. So.
Oh wow, that's nice.
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, worth it to go and pull the information from there if you can.
Cool. I will remember that. I'll be making my list.
That's right. Just on board, send it to me.
I just did my whole long list in January when I was in Salt Lake, so I can't, and that was all birth, marriage, and deaths, you know, because they have the index and indexing on Family Search, but because of the new contract, and they explain it there why they had to take that off. So.
Because Cook County wanted to make the money.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
We are a bankrupt government.
Especially when it comes to records.
Yes. So there is good stuff out there, but yeah, just let me know. I can do that.
Very cool. All right, well, I think we've covered Chicago pretty well, unless anyone else has any other thoughts. No? Okay. Well, so his next stop was heading over to, I think he went to England, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they talked about his Irish ancestor.
Yes.
So, um, so his Irish ancestor ended up, he was Catholic, and so he ended up being asked to serve in the Peninsular Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Chris had no idea about any of that.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting to see his reactions, and I particularly enjoyed his reaction about, well, they didn't even have a church they could go to. You know, obviously, you know,
in
not everyone's
today's
up
world,
to
it's almost,
speed on history.
it's almost
Yeah, it's like,
unfathomable
what?
to us, right? Today, yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
because,
right.
you know, we're fortunate to live in a place where there are, you know, many, many, many different churches and religions around us. So, you know, the thought of being Catholic and not having a place to go
Right. Well, and they
is
couldn't do
very
anything.
foreign.
Yeah, he couldn't have land. He couldn't get a decent job. So that's why he ended up, you know, serving in the army. You know, and I
Right.
think one of the most favorite parts I had is when he went to the battlefield. And when he
Yes.
was standing there and the historian was explaining in detail, you know, where people came, you know, across the field and talking about, you know, their sabers and their, you know, all these things coming at him. And he said, you know, it must have been so loud with all the shrieks and the screaming. And he says, and now all you can hear is the wind. And I just, it just
Oh,
gave me
wow. Eerie.
chills,
Goosebumps.
you know. But yeah.
Yeah, that was
There's
in
nothing like being
Portugal,
in the
right?
place and then having somebody explain to you exactly what happened, you know, and you can envision it as
It
you stand
reminded
there.
me of when we did the tour of the Gettysburg battlefield. And the first time that I did that tour, it was on a bus, and they had an audio, and it was the soldiers talking. And, you know, you could hear the gunfire and who was coming and that sort of thing. And that's what that battle, when they were talking about that on the Chris Noth episode, it was, you know, it's the same idea. It's like, oh, first person almost.
Yes, yes. And I love that he picked up some rocks from the battlefield to take home to his son, to explain to his son.
I know.
Hey, but that's illegal. You know he's not getting back in the country with that. Listen, when I left Ireland, they wanted to have rocks, dirt, any of that. I wanted to get shoes and tell them to scrape it out.
That'll be the headlines. Terry has called Homeland Security. Chris Noth can't get back into the state.
Well, you know, that's probably why you kept getting harassed when you were coming back in the country. They knew. They knew you were a genealogist. They figured that you probably had some dirt or some rocks hidden.
Yeah, the only thing we brought back was a candy bar.
Did any of you catch the name, because he said bloody...
Oh,
I
did look it up.
Oh, good, because I didn't write it down like I wanted to, and I don't want to have to wait until... But it's bloody Elva, or... I'm told I was lost at that point, but... When you look that up, it was the speed. You know, Sherry, you touched upon that perfectly about goosebumps, but it depended upon how fast you could reload your bayonet.
Yeah.
And that when you've got 200 plus men coming at you, you know, that was like, oh my gosh.
Right, and he talked about you could see the face of the man that you were getting ready to kill, you know?
Just unbelievable.
But yeah, that caught my attention there, is the speed, because you're thinking, you know, you're thinking current day, you know, a gun, how fast a gun can go off, but you know, the reloading the bayonets, and it's like, whoa.
It was called the Battle of Albuera, A-L-B-U-E-R-A.
A-L-B-U-E-R-A. Great.
Yes.
Okay.
Albuera.
Yeah, because they called it Bloody Albuera.
Yes. Yeah, so I Googled it and a wiki page came up. Good old wiki.
Ah.
I do have to say, I loved all the records that they showed while he was at the archives in Kew.
Mm-hmm.
What was it, the out pension records that they looked through?
Yep.
Yeah.
And the quarterly pay list.
Yeah.
Which was that was the company pay book.
Right.
Right. And then he was awarded a medal.
Yes.
The Peninsula War Medal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really amazing that he survived that. When they
Yeah.
said that like 1 in 4 people died, I was like, what?
Yeah, yeah.
Frightening.
And then, of
Any
course,
other
the Ireland. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, because we talked about it in the last IDG chat about the Napoleon and the Napoleonic War, and then ironically how it was brought up in this episode. So Shannon was probably going crazy after watching that part.
Yeah. Instead, she's off enjoying the sun in Florida.
Yeah, we won't go there. No, we're not going there.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Some of us are not going there.
No. Only Christine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You guys can live vicariously.
Yeah, we're going to
Yes,
have to,
well,
unfortunately.
We'll all be glued to our Facebooks.
Right, exactly.
And tweets.
Yes.
And so then from England, he made his way up to Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Yay!
Yay!
I loved it because they showed him driving down that one road, and it just reminded me when we were in Meath going to Newgrange. It's like it looked exactly like the road to Navan.
Yeah.
Little itty bitty tiny road, trees and everything brushing past you on both sides. It totally was. It brought me completely back.
Aw.
Yeah. But we talked a little bit about the no church for them, for the Catholics to go to, and that was due to the penal laws.
Right.
Which is important. And I know I told Val I would find her the link. There's a video out there about a lecture that was given recently, I believe, in Ireland for people to really understand all that. So they couldn't baptize, they couldn't marry, they couldn't bury their dead with a proper Catholic funeral.
Do you know, it's funny, but I think in modern times, we're talking again about, it's really important to be able to see the world through the lens of the time for when this happened. And, you have groups today who think that, and rightly so, they are oppressed, but they don't understand that they're not the only ones. Catholics in Ireland were oppressed. The Highlanders in Scotland were oppressed.
Right.
And every country has that. Every ethnicity has come through some sort of oppression. It's not just, a modern day phenomenon.
Right. That's absolutely true.
Definitely not. Any other thoughts on the Chris Noth episode?
I do have to, I just a little funny with it. When, I think it was when he was it was either Ireland or London, there was a sign behind him that read, beware, horses may kick or bite you. It cracked me up. I think maybe it was like by the church or something in Ireland. I'll have to watch it again to find it.
Yeah,
well, then at the ending credits, I noticed he was standing by a wall and there was a horse in the background and it started to come towards him.
Oh, too funny.
I'm like, uh-oh.
That church was awesome.
Yeah.
Of course, I love churches and cemeteries, and I noticed the broken stones right away, and and of course, with Irish on my husband's side, and well, my my mother-in-law too, but the graveyard where he was at, and when he said, you know, it was inbred toughness. And it's like, whoa, it's really true.
It's so true. It's so true. I will say this, there's a lot of cemeteries that kind of look like that, like the toppled over gravestones, or they're just so old and kind of decayed that you can't read them. I have not even begun to post half of the pictures that we took out there. And I probably took well over 1,000.
I'll bet, yeah.
They're very, you know, I went to the small churchyard in Cork that they called the Old Churchyard. The church was burnt down by Cromwell's people with 400 people inside. Yeah. And so now all that remains are like the walls, and all around is, you know, graveyard. But there are also graves now within the church.
Oh.
Right.
It's very interesting to just kind of look at. We're walking through here, and I'm just like, well, where's the church? Where's the church? All I see are like these bushes. And then I looked again from a different angle, and all those bushes were really like, you know, walls, like vines and stuff growing on the walls.
Wow.
It was amazing. Yeah. So one day I'm going to get all those pictures up.
You know, it's just looking at that episode, and then again, it comes to light in the Leah Michele one, that it's amazing, really, how any of us are even here. You know,
absolutely.
So many times when our ancestors could have been wiped out. You know, and you look at Chris Noth. I mean, he could have been, his line could have been wiped out in the Great Fire of Chicago. His line could have been wiped out in that battle. His line could have been wiped out in the potato famine.
Right.
You know, and yet he's here to tell the story, or to learn the story. It just, it's absolutely mind-boggling.
I agree.
Well, that's like these two first-hand accounts are, you know, back for the Chicago fire. Even more goosebumps, because it's like, oh my gosh, if they, you know, didn't survive,
exactly,
I wouldn't be here. You know?
Exactly.
And it's just amazing, and how fortunate they were where their houses were at the time, and what they did. And it's like, oh my gosh, I should pin certain parts of that up on my computer whenever I feel wimpy or whiny.
I know.
No, I told my daughter that one time. She was telling me, I can't. And it was something stupid. And I was like, I looked at her, I'm like, can't is not in your vocabulary anymore. Your family survived the potato famine. They didn't leave
until something like that on my kids. I can't wait for their response.
And seriously, if you think about it, they did not leave during the famine. They didn't leave at the beginning. They left years after the famine.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, my dad used to talk about survival of the fittest, but sometimes it's just stroke of luck, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Really. It's God, by God's grace, we're here.
Yes.
Yeah.
A great episode.
It was. It really is. I can't wait to watch it again.
So it looks like Jennifer's maybe lost her sound.
Oh, no.
No.
No, I hit mute. I'm a dog. Oh. I'm just talking to myself.
I thought it was charades. I wasn't sure.
I thought it was because you didn't want to talk about the next episode. You know,
no. I was actually saying, you know, what a great episode it was, and that it was great to see, you know, all the great scenery and how engaged he was in the whole process.
Yeah.
That was really great. And, of course, he took stones home to his son, so that's kind of neat.
In spite of Homeland Security.
I'll just chuck them at him if they start hassling me.
Yeah, that'll get you far.
We'll see here.
I'm waiting to do my own I'm waiting to do my own border security episode when I try to cross over on Tuesday.
Just remember, no,
when you just, that's when you keep your mouth shut and you smile and say yes and no. not always easy to do. All right, so our next episode, which of course was all about Leah Michele and her family, it was really fascinating. I watched it, and of course towards the end I get all teary because I can't help it. I'm a teary person. But it was interesting. I didn't know that Leah had grown up mostly with her Italian side of the family and really was not in touch with her Jewish side.
Mm-hmm.
So to me that was really interesting because I'm not a practicing Jew. My family is kind of a mixture of Catholic and Jewish, and so I was, as a kid, told, well, you get to pick what you want to be, and not until I was much older that I realized, yeah, whatever. So, as an adult, I'm learning about my Jewish heritage, and so it was interesting for me to see her go through kind of that experience of,
right.
She knew that she was a Sephardic Jew, which is, they descended from the Jews of Spain, and that was about all she really knew. She knew that they had left the country, but she didn't know for sure even what country they had gone to before they came to the United States. So I really enjoyed, her discovery
Yes.
of all that information, and it seemed like her dad probably had already done a little bit of research himself, or he was really, really coached.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was definitely handling Ancestry like he had used it many times.
I thought, yeah. I hope they paid him because he's Ancestry today.
Oh, yeah, totally. He definitely knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he did.
So that was really interesting, just seeing their interaction and of course then he's like, well, you need to go to Ellis Island.
Yeah.
And my first thought is, but not everyone came through Ellis Island.
Yes, yes.
But I am glad they did show it, though, finally.
Well, and I know that they obviously knew where his family had come through, so they wouldn't have sent her there on a wild goose chase.
Right.
But that would have been fun, though.
It would. It would be a good lesson.
Yeah, it shows what we go through every day.
Reality TV, the life of a genealogist. Oops, not really.
Exactly.
And did you guys notice that when her father was talking about looking at the different censuses, he was talking about looking at the most recent and then going further back?
Yes.
I was like,
I was clapping, yay!
Yeah. I was like, how did he know that?
Yeah, exactly.
And that brought home to me for one of my projects for a client is he made a point to say, and she noticed, well, the one said that from Turkey, and then the next one said from Greece, and then the next one from Turkey, and it's like, oh, welcome to my world. Picking out from that, the immigration year and which column, and of course, and this project that I have is, in Manhattan, and it's like, oh my gosh, and then I picked up a really good point, whether or not I heard it in the past and just forgot about it, or because now I'm really into this Jewish project, but they use their Hebrew names coming through Ellis Island. So that was really good. But I was so glad to see the different parts of Ellis Island and to finally show that. And we were talking the other day how we all want to go there for an overnight trip. Just close it down, let us go in. But I want that park ranger to be there with us.
Yes. Yeah, I was amazed at the bunk beds. I'm like,
27 people in a room.
Yeah.
27 people
there was
in a
like
room.
no space in between them.
That was like the prisoner of war museum at Edinburgh Castle. That's how their beds were set up. That they were just hammocks slung, and so it was like bunk beds, but they were 3 high, and then back to back.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
We were there in '07, and I did not see the bunk room, and I did not see that little courtroom.
Was that when they were renovating?
I
I
don't
was
know.
just going to say maybe it was during the renovations that they had that area closed.
Possibly. But it is when you walk through there, and you know, we didn't. I don't think it was a guided tour. I think it was like you walk through and you read like the different things, and you could just feel what that energy would have been like. How they were, you know, packed wall to wall with people just waiting to go through. And sometimes these lines were like days long.
Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And can you imagine being,
No.
you know, her age, she's a widow, and going through that and then be told, oh, I'm sorry, you have to be detained, and continually and continually, and it's like, I don't like to travel across the state by myself, let alone that. And
I think she was pretty well set up to know that it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
That she was going to go through that.
Really?
Well, because, well, like I said, it said she was going to Montreal to meet the boyfriend or the fiance.
Right.
But here she is trying to get off in New York. Oh, and he's in New York too.
Yeah.
So why did you? One of the questions they asked her, why does it say you're going to Montreal? Because I was told I had a better chance because I couldn't read or write.
Yeah.
So I think she knew that she was going to try to get off there, and that most likely she would have a problem.
Right.
But she didn't even get sent back home, right?
Could be. Could be.
No.
I liked
No.
Yeah.
Because of the world.
Yeah.
Because of World War
liked
I,
when-
quite a few people
Sorry, go ahead.
were. Because of World War I, I was reading this book, Coming to America, that was a history of Ellis Island, which is an absolutely fabulous book if you get the chance to borrow it from the library or buy it. They talk about during the World War how so many people were detained because they couldn't be shipped back to their home country. And, you know, that for years some of these people were detained.
It seemed like they mentioned that in the episode, that they could send her back, and that's why they sent her out to get a job so she could take care of herself. She was kind of on parole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That was in January of 1920. Still on parole.
Right, right.
Stating that she got married, though.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
For her.
That was smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was very smart.
Yeah. And, oh my gosh, I started to tear up, of course, because Morris had wrote, you know, that testimony.
Yes.
And it was so heartfelt. And it's like, oh, you just like, oh. Yeah, of course, we started crying again.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then that's too when I think at that point, I didn't write down about narrating, but I think that was when they were explaining about the fire in Greece.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to interweave, you know, both.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
she'd
This is
gone
why
back.
she couldn't go back.
Yep.
Yeah, there was a fire in Salonika, which is where she was from,
Yeah.
that affected 50,000 Jews who lost their homes and businesses.
Yeah. I was wondering if that's where she lost her husband, or maybe in the war. They never did say, you know, how she became a widow to begin with.
Right. That's a very good question. Mark? So I'm trying to track back where we were. So they found the passenger manifest and all that kind of cool stuff. And then she goes to meet with an immigration historian who explained all of that cool stuff about coming to marry her brother-in-law. And
Quick about the special inquiry records.
yes.
Have you seen those before?
I have not. I'd heard about them. Again, in that book, Coming to America. You know, they documented all that stuff.
It was amazing the information that she was able to get from that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, to hear, basically in the woman's own words,
Right.
how awesome would that be?
Yeah. I was thinking how sad and how hard it was that they had to go through that, but how wonderful for descendants to be able to read
Yes.
Yeah.
those documents.
I thought, gosh, Dad, why couldn't you have done that and had created all the records for me? And yes. Typical German. I'm just going to say exactly what they want because I want to get through. So I just, but yeah, and it went on. It was so long, and then, it was really good historical background that they gave, but then this inquiry document, and then I got all excited about seeing the New York marriage certificate.
Mm-hmm.
I liked when she was sitting in the courtroom and sitting on the bench.
Yes.
And saying she may have sat on this very bench. I love those things when they really connect with where their ancestors were. It just always makes me kind of tear up and gives me chills. I loved that
because
part.
It's what we do, right? We go to these places and we. I went to church. I walked to the front where they were baptized. I walked to the front where they were buried. I sat at the dock where they left.
Yes.
It is very awe-inspiring, and it just kind of chills through your body.
Sure.
That's like the historian, or well, I should say librarian in Montana. When I went, she took me to the courthouse, and it's set up exactly, they haven't really changed it at all, upkeep and so forth, but where my great-grandfather's sister's husband would have sat had he gone to trial. He shot himself 3 times, and the third one was a charm to kill himself, but three times.
Oh.
But to sit in the actual chair in the courthouse, and there's where the jury would have sat. It's like the same moment as when she was going through there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and as with any Jewish story, of course, we have who was left in Europe and may have been involved in the Holocaust or victims of the Holocaust. And so then when she discovered that she had some ancestors who were deported to Auschwitz, and she actually got to meet her cousin, Kochi, or Cookie, Mordecai, who was apparently had lived with her father, Leah's father, during a brief period, and she presented that page from Yad Vashem, the page of testimony about Cookie's dad.
Yes.
That, to me, was awesome because a lot of people don't know about these pages of testimony. And when I was at the OGS conference on Thursday, I actually was giving a presentation on Jewish genealogy on the internet, and I was talking about those pages of testimony.
Oh.
And so when that came up, I was like, wow, how weird, all in the same week.
Yeah.
And so excuse me, I'm going to cough. So I had been talking about how basically what these pages were an opportunity for people to put down their memories of Jewish people who had died in the Holocaust. And so sometimes they have photographs, which are awesome, and sometimes they're firsthand accounts of their experience with the person in the concentration camp. So even if you weren't related to the person, maybe you were in the camp with them and you survived and they didn't. That could also be what one of those pages of testimony would be. But when I was giving my presentation, my mom and stepdad had come to see me give the presentation, which of course made me very nervous. But
I'm sure you did a fantastic job.
Yeah, but it actually was kind of interesting because, of course, the whole time I'm talking about my mom's side of the family, the Engel family, and how they came to America, and all these different resources you can use to research Jewish family. And I bring up a page that is a page of testimony. It's not about my family, but it was an example for people to look at. And it was of this little boy who was maybe a year old. And it was a picture of him, and I see my mom start to tear up. Oh. And I'm like, sorry, Mom. Cry. But later she was saying to me, she was like, oh, it just broke my heart seeing that picture of that little boy and knowing that somebody just wanted to remember him even though he was so young. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly why all of us genealogists are doing what we're doing is, every life matters, and we want to, preserve their memory even if, they only lived a year. So, are you going to say something?
Oh, I absolutely agree that, that's exactly why we do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And of course the part that made me weep when I was watching the show was when Leia's dad and the cousin got together, and
oh yes,
yeah, that just was just like, oh, I got all weepy.
I love when she told her dad, "Now quit pretending you're Italian."
Yes, I was just yeah, quit pretending you're Italian.
He totally had that Italian accent going too.
Yeah, he just didn't know, but now he does.
Yes. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I'm glad they had the what do you call it, the subscript, what she's saying on the bottom of the screen.
Subtitles.
Yeah, because it was hard to understand her. She had, was that the strong Jewish language that she still
Yeah, she probably had a bit of a, well, I think she said that she was living in Israel.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So she probably had a pretty good, Hebrew way of speaking. They try and speak Hebrew there in Israel. It's the national language.
I mean, I loved hearing that, but it's like, okay, now what are you saying? I need to take notes. Can you slow down and can you enunciate that a little bit better? And then, trying to, and of course by this time, this is now into the second hour towards the end, and my hand wasn't writing fast enough, but and then to be in the synagogue there in New York City, just was pump.
It was amazing how many, the wealth of records that are available in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Just incredible.
Yeah. I have to say,
she was able to do all of her history without, leaving.
That's just exactly what I was going to say. Out of all these episodes, this is my favorite, only for the fact that she never left New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She went place to place and learned everything there, which, the show doesn't really show that a lot of this you can learn from home.
Right.
Yeah, it's great to go and tour it and be that tourist and see the home place, but, there's so much you can learn from home before you do all that. You don't have to jump on the plane and go, overseas right away.
And research at home is not just online, right?
Right.
Do online research at home, and then there's still so much information available in the local archives or the archives within the country before you even get to the point where, she would want to go to Israel or Turkey or wherever.
Exactly.
Well, there was a huge chunk of the episode at the Center for Jewish History.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was so jealous.
I know, me too. It's like, oh my gosh.
Every time I give my talk about Jewish genealogy, I always bring up the Center for Jewish History in New York because they house 5 different archives there.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, I have got to go one of these days.
I'm going to check and see if my client would like to cover the expenses, and I'll go. Sorry, you can't go, but, send me and Jennifer.
Right. You need an assistant to help you with all those records.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right now I have boots on the ground in New York doing, some of this work, and then someone else in New Jersey, but not this particular part of it. So, yeah, and the maps and the history, and that's when he explained about the fire and how much damage and where the fire, is being very specific in saying that it was the center of the city in Salamanca, and that Isaac, which was her great-great-grandfather, was a victim of the fire. I kind of, at this point in time, it's like, oh my gosh, was he in Auschwitz or something? So I kind of did a few relief that he was a victim of the fire, And, I hate to see anybody be a victim of anything, but that was to me a lot better than,
Yes.
being in Auschwitz, so. Yeah. But then, unfortunately, her great-grandmother had died there. But, yeah. And I won't talk about that, just to change the subject.
Yeah, that's the danger with talking about Jewish history.
Right.
Pretty much hard to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was such a big part of our history. But,
and then, of course, too, it's hard because I've got, my maiden name is 100% German. It's like, I'll cover that part up when I'm speaking, so.
It's funny you mentioned that. So at the Ohio conference, Shannon and our booth was right across from Jim Beidler, and he does German stuff like crazy, and he was teaching a German handwriting class and all this kind of stuff, and it was interesting to overhear some of the things people say. So he had a individual come by, and he asked if she had any German in her family history, and she goes, no, and I don't want to have any, and she walked away.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, obviously somebody grew up during World War II,
right,
and then still holds a grudge against the Germans.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just like, even though I'm Jewish, I don't hold that against the Germans that are there today.
Right.
It was a bad time. I understand that, during that time, it was a very oppressive and frightening situation, and they were mostly acting out of fear anyway. So I don't hold it against the German people. But,
Right.
then again, I'm younger, and so I probably don't have that, that is strongly ingrained in my life as older folks would. But yeah, that happened, and I was just like, what?
Wow.
And he said every once in a while he does get that reaction, and he just kind of lets it go and shakes his head, like, okay.
Well, really, it's kind of all you can do,
Yeah.
If people are living in that mindset, like, at this point in their life, you're not going to change their mind.
No. Definitely not. So is there anything else anyone wants to talk about with these episodes?
No, but
sad.
again, it's a whole testament to just survival and luck of the draw that she's here to tell the story, just because of the the whole thing. Well, the fire and then Auschwitz, and really by God's grace that she's here.
Right. It's the same theme as you mentioned before, Christine, with Chris Noth's episode. It's here in this one as well.
Yeah.
It just amazing. Thankfully. Well, we don't have to wait too much longer, even though Who Do You Think You Are is over. We don't have to wait too much longer for another genealogy show coming up.
True.
Let's look at it. So Tuesday, May 17th is when Genealogy Roadshow premieres on PBS.
Yay.
Yay.
So.
Yay.
And both Mary Tedesco and Kenyatta Berry in posting on Facebook with me, and yeah. Well, Josh hadn't replied yet. He must be busy. No. But both Mary and Kenyatta both told me, have your tissues with you. And review. And Kenyatta's, just got tears, just wet cheek. And I remember last year when she said, oh, it's so hard to hold back, that on camera. Well, there's nothing held back this time, and they both said, have your Kleenex box there with you.
Wow.
Oh, my.
Huh?
Wow. Well, I think we're getting close to the end of our time, and I'm not sure what we're going to talk about this next week, but I'm sure with some of the other genealogy shows that we haven't talked about in a while, maybe we'll go back and finish watching some of a Long Lost Family or a Relative Race.
Yeah.
I know I have been meaning to get back and watching some of those. But we do have Genealogy Roadshow coming up, and actually our dear friend Shannon will be at NGS, and she has an opportunity to interview Josh and Mary at the conference. So if you have questions, fire those away to Shannon. She would appreciate any input on questions you'd like to have answered. So keep that in the back of your mind.
So her email.
Her email is Shannon at theinDepthGenealogist.com. So email her. And in the meantime, I thank each of you ladies for joining me tonight. It was fun to hear your thoughts on everything.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's always wonderful.
Thank you.
And I don't have to talk the whole time. It's good. So remember, everyone, we would love to hear from you. Drop us a line in the comments below. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or send us an email at editor@theinDepthGenealogist.com. On that note, have a great day, and remember to go in depth with all of your ancestors. Bye.